And that's the camera.
All right, good morning, guys, and happy Friday to everyone.
Yay.
Thank you for joining us today for this critical discussions. As we know right now, there are a lot of changes in administration and the government. And so I wanted to talk today about recent federal budget cuts and their impacts on the government contracts, as we are one of the government contractors. So as anyone, I'm sure everyone in the world is aware that there are like huge changes in the US government right now, and there are significant spending reductions in 2025, led by the Department of Government Efficiency, aiming to streamline operations, reduce expenses, and of course, this measures they greatly enhance efficiency, but of course, they also pose some actual challenges for public institutions and communities they serve. So at Taika, we support and recognize the importance of regular reviews and transparency with government spending to prevent issues like inflated contracts. But we also observe the other side of this coin. Like we observe that this changes are affecting our government clients, create a lot of stress, and that's why we're here today to just kind of like discuss. Just do our own meeting on this and just kind of share our own insights in the turbulent times. So let's just introduce ourselves a little bit. I'm Maggie. I'm the co-founder of Tech Translation. So what do? We do translation, transcription, interpretation, pretty much anything language and any digital service you could imagine. And what is my position? I guess right now I would just say that I'm the project consultant and the manager of outside the box thinking. Jason, would you tell a couple of words about yourself?
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Jason Ehlinger, and I'm the CEO of Taika Translations. And I manage the day-to-day operation for the executive team, our leadership development among the ranks of all of the levels in our company. And I will review the financial and contractual relationships that we have with our clients. And basically, my job is to make sure that the ship is going in the right direction and that we're running full steam ahead at all times, even through turbulent waters. And so that's for us. This is one of those situations in the reality of operating in business where we have to deal with that. And so this gives us great opportunity to shed some insight into that. And I think that Taika Translations is particularly poised in a great position to be able to provide that type of knowledge and information for people out there who are navigating this together with us.
What about you, Jake? Could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, Jake Garder, business development for Taika Translations, and I am responsible for discussing contracts with the government agencies and the different contract representatives for each of those agencies for pursuing, opportunities within the federal government and to, help navigate different contract opportunities that are out there. There are a lot of different mechanisms with which we purchase and supply the government with services. And, the role that I play is helping Taika Translations navigate those different avenues of obtaining work and providing service to the federal government.
Awesome. So, I mean, I know, Jake, you have like a ton of experience working with the government, different government contracts, like you mentioned. So, could you provide us a little insight of how these budget cuts are actually helping? Like, so what is the rationale behind them, and what are the challenges that you see the government entities are facing right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in any business or any kind of entity, organization, you have to have responsible spending. And I think that right now we are seeing a massive, unprecedented amount of spending being cut, which has really never happened in our lifetime. Other than maybe, in the last 100 years, we've seen non-defense cuts, or I mean, excuse me, defense cuts right after World War II was about the only time that we could really ever see a comparison to this.
Wow.
And so, um, while it is very much a painful process all around, I mean, it's not easy for the government to cut this spending. It's not easy for the contractors that are seeing the spending being cut, and it's not easy for the agencies that have built kind of, a bureaucracy or an infrastructure around this spending to have to do that. Like in any organization, it is necessary to have some responsible spending and to have a budget that makes sense, that you're not, accruing debt, and you're not, basically operating from a point of deficit. So that's the goal of these budget cuts, is to reduce, the overall federal deficit and to maybe prevent catastrophe down the road. I don't want to dig too deep into numbers and kind of keep this a little bit broad, but there is some different studies out, and the Committee for Responsible Federal Budget, which is basically a consultants that work for the federal government as a budget consultant. They predict that if we continue on our current course of spending as we have over the last decade, by 2032 we will have exceeded about 116% of GDP just in deficit. So we'll be actually operating from a negative point of GDP by 2032 if we don't correct some of this, and get our course corrected. So, it's painful, but it's also somewhat necessary to make sure we don't have a tipping point where we go off the cliff, basically federally, as the federal government. So.
Absolutely. As you mentioned this word painful. Okay, so here's another question for you. Like, I know we have done it, like we connected with all our government clients, discussing how they're feeling. So, I mean, I know you talked to a lot of the POCs there. So can you share, like, how does it feel? What is the temperature inside those offices right now?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the temperature is all over the place, but because some people are feeling very good, and they're very happy to see this happen. Some POCs, some contract representatives are very glad to see some of this, taking place, because they want to see some, contracts get reined in. But then a lot of people, definitely there's a lot of fear, because we're seeing, government employees being let go. We're seeing, agencies being told they have to trim back, and that's always hard. That creates a sense of maybe panic and a sense of a little bit of fear around what the future looks like for them. So I would say that overall, it's just really tumultuous for most government agencies currently right now.
It's probably some of that. Previously you kind of knew how things were running, and then all of a sudden everything changes, and now there's just a big fear of the unknown, and that always shakes everyone up. So temperature automatically, in that case, it just goes up drastically, and I mean, people are on their edges.
Absolutely. So, are there any kind of like ideas, like what can people use to actually go through this, like go through a shakeup among in the office, among the ranks? And especially you, Jake, like you talk to multiple offices, like maybe you have heard like what they're doing, just kind of make it a little bit less stressful to themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of them are trying to. I think there's a lot of introspection going on in the offices. I think they're taking a good hard look at what they're doing, what their processes are. I mean, obviously, we're going to talk about, this is Department of Government Efficiency. Whenever you start looking at efficiency, you've got to look to see where redundancies are. Where are you, maybe where are you lacking, or where do you have some weaknesses that you need to shore up and some strengths? I think there's a lot of that going on right now, from the top down. I would say in every office, there's a lot of people who are maybe paying a little bit more attention to the amount of work that's being produced and who's producing it.
So who do you think at the end of all this will come out as the strongest? Like, I just mean the perfect government employee. What characteristics should that person have?
I would say someone who is willing to, to work within the scope of what they're supposed to be doing, have deliverables and, workloads that match their specialties, and that they're, doing the things that they have deadlines and they have, you know, things they've got to be accomplishing, that's actually getting done, and it's getting reported that it's getting done, you know. As far as characteristics, I mean, you know, the characteristics of any good worker, you know, being hardworking, you know, humble, being willing to take direction, being willing to, you know, maybe make changes and be more innovative, you know, in some of the approaches that they've got to do to be more efficient. I mean, that's, you know, I'm not a government employee, but if I was in one of their shoes right now, I'd be really looking at myself saying, you know, how could I work a little bit better? How could I work a little bit smarter? And how can I become more valuable, you know, to my organization so that they see that I bring a value and I'm not just quote unquote wasted, you know, wasted space or wasted paycheck. Um, and that's not just even government workers. That's every one
Absolutely.
who
I was
works,
just
you
about
know.
to say the same
Yeah.
thing, because that feeds into every walk of work, anywhere and everywhere that you are. Like, it's no, even if your organization run by a union. My brother, you know, he works for Delta Airlines, and he's a pilot over there, and he in his role, they're like, you know, I could, because he's been there a while, because he says I could literally not work most of the time and still get a huge paycheck. But it's like, I don't want to be seen as the most unproductive pilot in the entire company.
Right.
And
Who gets paid the most?
because when the going gets tough, guess where they're going to look? They're going to, and they're going to, you know, they're going to be looking at those most unproductive sections of their organization, and trimming out what the excess. And so uh, I think that you're exactly right, that in everyone's role, and no matter, that's just a quality of living standpoint to me as well. You need to be adding value where you are, bloom where you're planted, right?
Absolutely. I was thinking when like to our own team, like this year we're talking to them beginning of the year and we said like, okay, one of the kind of like a slogans that I like is bring back the brain. You know, like we're so used to process stuff the way we did it for years, and it's like, okay, this is just a no-brainer. Well, how about we bring back the brain and actually do it way better than we did it for years? So
A lot of times when you start up a business, that's all about you know, everything possible that you can build efficiency into, to make sure that you make a margin on your product, so that you can get out of that startup phase. And once you get out of that startup phase, you can kind of get a little bit lazy, because you don't have to
right.
engage the brain as much, because all of those systems and processes have been figured out for you. But I think that this situation kind of is bringing back out common sense, bringing that to the table, and starting to force people to be a little bit more proactive in being productive. I remember specifically when I was in the United States Air Force, and the commander of our squadron, he wanted to order some big, huge piece of equipment, and there were multiple options, and the superintendent and him had a big argument, because the commander wanted this specific thing, and it was super expensive, and it had all these bells and whistles, and the superintendent was like, but look, commander, we have all of these other options, and they do the same thing, and they're half the price. So why are we not buying this thing over that thing? It was like, I really like this brand. It's like, well, we can't use that as a justification. We have to bring back our brain. We have to apply that to the situation, and make what the most advantageous decision for the taxpayers, because ultimately we were all we're, and you know, in serving in the United States military, you're a government servant as well. And so you have to apply being productive and those efficiency mechanisms wherever you've been elected into your position, or signed up to serve.
So, Jason, can you tell more? Like, so right now, if we're looking, okay, our main goal, I mean, as a government contractor, same as all the government entities, like, our main goal is to serve the community. Okay, the budgets are cut, there's stress levels, but still, the community is to be served. Like, in any case, the service should be provided. Okay, what is the ways to navigate it?
Yeah, so we're a service provider. That's the bread and butter of everything that we do. We provide service to the communities, to schools, to government agencies, to individuals and corporation, large and small alike. And um, one thing that we've decided that's often helped us navigate through really tough times like this is as we created our values for our organization, guiding points of vectors that determine how we're going to frame out situations. And that one of them was, we do not make decisions on fear. And I think for each and every person out there, the tendency is to go towards to be impacted by all the very charged messages, the noise in our media, from our friends and neighbors, from somebody who who somebody got let go over here and somebody else in somebody else's town, and you heard that story and it was like, oh my gosh, what if I'm next? And we decided early on in our company, because there are so many opportunities along the way to make a decision based on fear. We said we are not going to make decision based on fear, because when you do that, there's two cousins that go together: there's fear and desperation, and then they both produce stupid. So you never can revert back to making your decisions based on fear when you're trying to bring a service to a market and be productive and profitable over time. And I know that wasn't exactly your question, but I don't know, are we moving into this next section already? Okay, I just want to make sure that we're going the correct direction. But as a leader, first and foremost, I kind of want to remind each and every person in their positions out there, anybody that's working to achieve any level of greatness, especially if you're going to be navigating the challenges of your organization that they're going to face, because sooner or later, all of us know that we're going to encounter a situation that's painful, that's challenging, that seems like we may not be able to overcome it. And you've been placed in your leadership role for this exact moment. And so many of us kind of forget that this is time to lead. When the going gets tough is when leadership truly shines, and when your true character and your skill as a leader comes out and shines the brightest. And I think it's very important for us to acknowledge right now, every leader of a team. I'm not talking about elected leader. I'm talking about a subsection inside of an organization where you're leading a team of 2 or 3 people, and then then your boss is leading a team of 10 people, and then their boss is leading a team of 20. I'm talking about those subsections throughout our organizations. This is the time for you to shine as a leader, for you to shine, to look to show what's going on to your people in your organization, and to say, guys, I don't know what the outcome is going to be. And that's okay, by the way. If you as a leader, you don't know what the future is going to look like for everybody. You don't have to know, because nobody can tell the future. But we can know a few things based on our history, because the best way to project what is going to happen in the future is to look at the past. Like, what has been the past trajectory up to this point? And all of us have a path. Each and every one of us have a path. So everybody in the government space right now is feeling some level of pressure. And I think that's very important for you to point out and acknowledge, and to help your teams understand that we're all in this together right now. And so many Americans, and as government contractors, just like Taika Translations is, we're in this together with many of the government organizations out there today. And that's why it's so important to take a step back and say, okay, we're not going to make a decision based on fear. We're going to address the reality that it does really suck right now, and we're all in this situation together. And I think acknowledging those few things gives us a level of comfort, because we can look back then and say, okay, we've managed however many years until this point, and we're here. And it's likely, because we have all those skills to solve all of those problems that we've solved for the last decade or two to get to this point, that we're going to be able to work through and solve this going forward. Because who is better placed to do that in our specific organization? You're best positioned to solve forwards. And those are some really important things that I want to point out first and foremost. Whether you're the leader of a small team or large department, this is your time to shine. And let's not make decisions based on fear. Vital to remember that no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on, and this is partisan in neither way. Have no way whatsoever. So if you're on the left, if you're on the right, if you're in the middle, it doesn't matter. You can apply this all across the board. So below are some really practical things that I want to share with you. that you can continue doing today that really have a huge impact on your ability, your team's ability, and your ability to weather the storms that are ahead. Now, guys, as I go through this, I really would like you to participate in the conversation as well, because I don't want to just bulldoze this section of it, because in this case, we'll get a lot better result if we get the inclusion of each of us, the perspective of each of us. So I want to make sure you guys have that permission to jump in. Okay, so address the human side of your organization, and this is something that I was hinting to earlier. There's a lot of people that are afraid. There's a lot of people that are going through this with you. So remember that teams are made up of humans, and when our relationships are solid in and among our teams and upwards on the chain of command, you are going to weather it much better than if you have broken relationships and you have just dissonance in your team. And I think that if you've got some challenges that you're working through with your direct leader, this would be a great time to work on those. To get with your leader and say, look, I know we've had our disagreements in the past, and these are, the things that we've been working through, but right now we're in this together. So this is a great time to start talking about those things and remake those really solid bonds between you and your teams. What do you guys think about that, Jake and Maggie?
No, I absolutely agree with your point. Actually, I was talking the other week. I was talking with one of the government employees who has been working in his position for 24 years, and his main concern was like, okay, I don't know, my boss hasn't said anything, so I don't know. Will I work here tomorrow? Like, okay, will I work here next month? Do I need to update my LinkedIn profile to have better profiles there so I can be hired somewhere else? I think that's kind of the hardest thing. Like, that definitely hurts the efficiency of the department. Like, when you have people just not having any clue, like, how safe they are, where they stand. Okay, nobody's maybe perfectly safe, but it's great when you have that open communication with your leader. So, like, okay, you're in this together. You're not just there by yourself alone, and in the dark and have no idea what's happening. I don't know, Jake, like, you spoke to many government people as well. I don't know if you have any other insight on that.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think, open communication, open lines of communication are really key. A lot of people aren't getting that, and I think that that's sometimes frustrating, and I think that's where organizationally, like Jason was saying, is like, no matter where you fall in the organization, if you're leading or if you have people, make sure you're communicating with them, because, really clarity is kindness. When you're clear to your team about what's going on, and maybe you don't have an answer and maybe you don't know what's going on, but you can at least let them know so they don't think you're holding back or keeping secrets that may hurt them later. I think that's, Stephen Covey has a book, and there's a whole course around it called The Speed of Trust. And it talks
Yeah.
about how, when we trust each other within business, within organizations, within, interpersonal relationships, that when you have that trust, and that open line of communication, that, really people don't feel isolated and alone. They feel like they're part of something. And even if something bad is happening or going on, they still feel more at ease because they're not in it alone. And I think that's really key,
Yeah, and this really leads into a really important leadership principle that there's a mystique out there in the area of leadership that says, keep your team members in the dark, so that it's not professional to share all the details of the negative things that are happening either in your organization or in the department that you've the good or bad things, really. And the my advice in these situations, when things are a little bit bleak and when things are a little bit uncertain, is you definitely, as you, over communicating is better in this situation than under communicating. Definitely, if you have information that you can share with your team, and especially in these really tumultuous moments, over communication is far better than being than not disseminating information. It's really the time to share more and touch base more and connect more with the people in your departments and up and down the chain. And so I think that's a really important practice, to make sure that you don't just because of all the noise, get distracted and say, wait a minute, all this bad stuff is happening. I'd rather just go inside my shell and kind of just hide for a little while and weather the storm. And in reality, you really need to be connecting and over communicating what's happening in and through your organization so that you can weather the storm together, and you'll have a much better sense of community. You have a lot better ideas on how to solve problems, and ultimately just having greater relationships with people that you're in the same room with or in the same office with. It never hurts you or harms you.
So can we touch base a little bit on like communication with the contractors? Like, okay, we as the contractor, well, how much communication have we experienced right now from the government side?
Oh yeah, that is a huge one. So some government organizations right now are really good about that, and some of them are just terrible about it. And I think it's because a lot of people are afraid, because they don't know what to expect. They don't know if DOGE is going to come by tomorrow and hack off their section of the government, and they're afraid. But in reality, just like I said before, remember with your teams, when we're dealing with treacherous waters, over communicating and connecting with more people is so much more valuable than just sticking in a shell. Because there might be solutions out there that your contractors can provide you, your vendors can come in and help you with, because honestly, really and truly, it's been a frustration of mine and Jake's as we work through negotiating different government contracts. And sometimes we'll be negotiating, and another contractor will have prices 2 or even 3 times higher than ours, and we're like, goodness gracious, they could have used us, because if nobody realizes, over the past 20 years, the translation and localization industry and digital services industry in general has gone through massive IT improvements. I'll say changes, improvements, new implementations with the changes in AI and AI assisted translation tools and interpretation tools and so on and so forth. And translation companies, we take and use those to our advantage as well. And a lot of companies are still doing much of the processing the old way, just like Maggie talked about previously. They're charging the old prices. But today's prices, they're a lot different, because you can do so much more, so much faster by the implementation of other tools. And that's why I was saying, Jake and I, looked at contracts that have been negotiated, and we're like, man, they just went through with these other contractors and they're charging way more than we would charge. And we're doing the exact same thing, working with the exact same vendors, doing that exact work, and simply they're overpaying for it. And so there are vendors and contractors in your space right now that you have access to, either through a GSA schedule, through a MOS contract, or through GWAC, or any of the other contracting vehicles that you have available, just like TIPS, the interlocal purchasing system contracting that we're on for state contracting individuals or entities. All of those contracting vehicles, you have access to vendors who are probably very efficient in their process and very good at their skill. And I think this is the time to reach out to them and say, okay, guys, what solutions can you provide that are cheaper, better, faster, and that still maintain that same high level of quality that we demand?
Yeah, I think a lot of times we hear this from the government's like, okay, I'm too tired, I'm too burnt out, I'm too stressed, so I want to go my old way because I do not have time to change. Like, or it's too stressful. Like, I'm already overloaded with work. It's like, wait, just let's pause. Let's just like restart. There are other ways, just like Jason mentioned, there are other ways to process stuff. It will help you as well. Because I mean, how long can you work in this stressed mode? Like, okay, I just feel like I'm pulling everything by myself. Like, well, there's absolutely no need to do that because they're great solutions. There's already contracts in place. Like, they're not inflated, they're great. Like, so just like use them, like maybe change the way you're doing stuff and it will make your own day better.
Jake and I were working on the NASPO contract, and not long ago we got on the interlocal purchase contract. And we're in our company's on the GSA contract. We're a GSA contract holder, which means there are vetted contracts in place that you currently have access to, that just because of all the noise and the fear in the marketplace right now, you might not be aware that there are really great vendors that are just at your fingertips that you can reach out to. And I think right now is the time to start new relationships with those types of vendors. And going forwards, I think it's going to be the new reality.
Yeah, I'm gonna chime in on that real quick. I think this is also indicative of where the federal government is headed. I think you hit it kind of right on the head there, Jason. Like this is going to be the new reality. The federal government is looking for, instead of entrenched bureaucracy, they're looking for innovation and efficiency. And I think as vendors and contractors to the federal government, it is up to us to provide that innovation and efficiency. And back to a previous question is, what can contractors and vendors kind of do? I would say that's a big thing is start really looking at your industry. Maybe it's not translation, maybe it's not services, maybe it's products, maybe it's development, maybe it's software, whatever it is. Look at ways that you can be innovative and efficient and provide a better service to the federal government. And I think if you do that, without much investment into time or energy or money, just little tweaks, little changes that save a little bit here and there, and you look more innovative and more efficient to the government, they're going to be looking for those types of vendors to do business with going forward. I'll be honest with you, I think gone, at least for this next 4 years, gone are the days of entrenched bureaucracy working very efficiently in the government. And those vendors that are willing to step into a little bit of an uncomfortable space and be like, we're going to be a little more innovative. We're going to think outside the box. We're going to turn the brain back on for a minute, and we're going to come up with some solutions that maybe they're not, the cookie cutter solutions we've seen in the past. Maybe it's something a little bit out there. I really feel like those are going to be the companies and the vendors who the federal government looks at and says, we really want to do business with you because we're looking for the innovative and efficient, people. And that's the movement that is happening right now. The DOGE movement is, we're looking for, ways to innovate, ways to be more efficient. I mean, it's written into their entity name as efficiency. So I really think that's going to be a key.
Now.
Yeah, that's going to be a key for most vendors, and contractors going forward. And that is sometimes a very scary thing because what we talked about this, what worked may not work anymore. And now it's really time to be innovative and those government agents that are going to be looking for maybe a little bit more creative solutions. That's going to be big for them.
Yeah. Well, there's been a lot of fear around AI and there's been a lot of fear around these technological advancements over the past years. But what people, I think that one of the messages that people need to hear is that people will always be needed. Machines can't replace people. And what I have seen, even like I can't imagine trying to start our company right now. We started it about a little more than 11 years ago. And then we're just at the beginning of this big technological boom, and we harnessed all of that, and we were, able to grow into the market and explode into government contracting and all the other areas. And so many people were afraid to take on the new technology because they were afraid it was going to eliminate their job. And that's not the case at all. The technology came in to assist us to be able to do more work faster and better. And it didn't, for us anyways, it did not eliminate our jobs. Now, I do know a few people in our industry and a couple companies in our industry that when we started to make that transition, they're like, no, we will stick to this old way. We'll never change anything about how we do it. And it is the only right way to do it. And they don't exist anymore. And they're not in our industry anymore. They've gone on to work in other places because they were too rigid to the changes. So the innovative and efficiency factor, I think they go hand in hand. And over the past 10 years, really, I think that innovation has maybe even 100x'd, and the new efficiency processes inside of our government processes and administration has maybe like comparatively been very, very, very small. And I think basically we just need to catch up with that, and that's what's happening right now.
I think that one of the phrases that's like dying out right now is that we still heard from our local partners is like, I can't. Well, I think right now is the time of I can't, like, oh, this is impossible, like that time is gone. Like, okay, so instead of just saying it's impossible, I can't do it, we just can't do it, like, no, we can, we just need to think and just think of a new way how to do that.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that, That leads into a really important point, because there have been a couple of times in my tenure as CEO of this organization, and I've looked, the situation looked really bleak. And I was reminded by my own mentors saying, look, in the bleakest of situations, when everything looks bad everywhere, first of all, you're better than you think you are, than you feel. You're better than you feel in those moments. And there are opportunities, they exist around you. And sometimes somebody needs to come in and remind us that, hey, there are opportunities. And if you acknowledge that there are opportunities and you keep your mind open that there may be opportunities, then you can participate in those and be part of the solution, instead of just being like, oh my gosh, everything's bad, everything's sad, and I don't know what to do. And in this case, there are always opportunities. That's maybe one of the biggest messages that mentors help me with, is that there are always opportunities in good times and in bad. And the great leaders have the discipline. And this is a discipline. This is a decision that each person has to make. It's not like some mystical reality out there. There's a decision that you have to make to say, yes, I will acknowledge and I will look for, in good times and bad, the opportunities that are there, because they are there. And it's just a simple acknowledgement and then keeping your eyes open. I mean, for over 20 years in my leadership here, from this organization and then in previous organizations, that has been an astounding answer. In always in the darkest of times, there are always opportunities, and if you're open to them, you can see them. But fear and closed off communication crushes your ability to see those. And so I think that's a key message that I hope that people take from this webinar today, is that there are definitely many opportunities available to us. And in these times, we just have to keep our minds open to them and be a part of the solution.
Well, I think even working, like if you are a government employee and you have all these contractors at your fingertips, and like I'm sure that I can tell for a lot of contractors, like we are here to help. We're here to brainstorm with you. It's not like, like, oh, I need just to send the purchase order. I just need to buy. Like, okay, let's just sit together, maybe think of idea. Of course, we're in services, but I'm sure it even works with people that just do products. Like, okay, let's think how can we do it? Like you can tap to so much talent at your fingertips, and this is free. Like you don't need to pay for that. Just like tap into this. Instead of just sitting there being overwhelmed, like just use us. I mean, just use the contractors to the fullest potential.
Yeah, because that's what they're there for. And their systems are already in place and contracts are already in place to facilitate that for your organization. Those, like I mentioned before, the interlocal purchasing system or the GSA and MOS contracts, I mean, those are already in place agreements that where all the negotiation has been done on your behalf. And you just have to go talk to those contractors and they can help you do what you're trying to do faster, cheaper, better, and in a way that you may not have realized. And so many times, a lot of our clients, I mean, I remember a contract that you won last year, Jake, when we were talking to the Park Service. And when we bid that, this is kind of just a real example, guys. When we bid that, we got a large contract from a federal government organization, and we bid it against many other contractors. And our cost for doing this work was a fraction of what the other bidders were bidding. And we went through this rigorous process that in the procurement in that contracting space, because they're like, okay, are you guys really sure? And we're like, yeah, we're absolutely certain. Like this is 100%. This works. This contract will work. This is great. And our report today is that when we do that work, like we make 80% margin on that work. And the other contractors who were bidding on that same work, they charged 50 and 150% more than we were. That's who we were bidding against. But there are contractors available to you that you have access to that are registered in SAMs, that are veteran-owned small businesses or hub businesses or federally certified business to do business in your demographic social demographic designations, and they're literally at your fingertips to help you be more efficient.
Well, just at the point of the sec, well, we're not charging 80% markup. Like,
No.
the way the government, we're just like processing so much more stuff in house. So we just have the people, have this talent, they know how to do stuff. So instead of just like paying somebody else, and just putting a margin on somebody else, we actually can do stuff in house, and that brings it, like, makes it so much cheaper for the government.
And I think that's a big change that happened in the government in the past, I'd say 10 years. I see more small businesses that are on these contracts that are able to do business with the government, and they don't have those hefty margins that they're daisy chaining out their work to. And so I think that's one of the things that when the government procurement officers, when you're reviewing the contract, sometimes the vendor who's much cheaper than the other one isn't worse. It's just simply that they're not daisy chaining out the work like many other companies still do today.
Well,
So
it's just less bureaucracy.
yeah, it's a ton less bureaucracy, and we're not restricted. That's the beauty about the small business working with the United States government offices, is that we're not restricted by all the bureaucratic processes, because we're in the free market and we can just operate with the technology as long as it's approved and not on the restricted list by any of the FAR regulations. We can operate within those bounds and provide all of that non-bureaucratic process efficiency to the government. And I think that's a really big opportunity where efficiency can come from for all of those government and federal and state offices.
I don't know, Jake, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, you guys really did a good job summing that up. I don't really have much. I think, from the government side as well, is sometimes maybe have a discussion with your vendors and maybe put an RFI out, instead of necessarily putting out an RFP or, something, put an RFI out and just throw out some ideas that maybe you could get some solutions to. It's an easy process that you can put something out on the GSA marketplace and say, we're just looking for information on this, and leave it open-ended and give us some solutions, be broad with it. I'm seeing a little bit more of that actually coming out in the last few weeks. We've seen some RFIs come out that instead of this really rigid plan that they have in place, they're asking for actual solutions or vendors to provide innovative ideas as to how you would do it. And I think that's great. I think that is such a neat thing to see the federal government kind of stretching a little bit instead of that rigidity, being a little more fluid, a little more open to out of the box thinking. So that's what I would say.
Bringing back the brain.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so there's one, over the past few weeks, as we've some organizations that we work with, they've gotten like 4 weeks ago, some offices got their government cards, purchase cards frozen, and then other ones did a couple of weeks after that, and then this week somebody else, another organization, they told us that their government cards are being frozen at 5 p.m. today. And another organization reached out to us and said, hey, would you, this was a federal organization, would you mind processing our payments a little bit differently? Because if you did, then we could work with you. And we're like, absolutely. I mean, we've got whatever way you want to pay us, we'll receive your money. So we've got many methods to receive money for a business. And they're like, previously they had only worked through us through their government purchasing card, but it took a little bit more justification. But when you're doing justified expenses, you don't have to worry about the justifications, because there's a justification. I mean, because you can justify it. And when you can justify it, maybe you don't have to, you just rely on your government purchase card, where there's less involved and less justification work involved. Instead, legitimate purchases with good justifications, they can be processed using other payment methods. And so one of the, I guess, the pro tips or contracting pro tip for the government right now that they can use is look at switching to another payment method to your vendors that may require slightly more justification, but because you actually have justification, you can use that method. And so that's been one of the ways that we've seen just over the past weeks, how some of the organizations said, okay, instead of this just kind of open-ended, non-discretionary spending now will use a more justified, a method that requires to be more justifactory. I don't even know how to say that. That we actually have to justify the expense, a little bit more legwork, but we're still able to keep things moving. And so, as an ad hoc solution, I think that maybe some of the organizations out there can benefit from using that, switching from your government purchase cards, because probably most of them are frozen right now, to either using ACH or the other methods for payment that you have available through your contracting systems. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I don't have anything to.
To add, what do you,
Yeah.
you wanted to say something else? Oh, no. Okay. So a lot of things are going to be changing during this time. So when you're working through engaging your team, keeping the communication going, looking at the current environment, dealing with what information that we know today, things are going to be changing, and you're going to have to be adapting. So during these times, continuous evaluation is very, very important. So when you make the change, or when if change has been placed upon you in your organization, measuring the change and then how that change is affecting your organization and what you can do through that is really important. So not just letting changes happen to you and wondering how the outcomes are going to be, but actually measuring that impact of that change on your work and on the people that you're working with, and communicating that up and down the chain of command. That's really important. Because just having changes happen and nobody measuring anything at all, and nobody kind of knowing how that's actually playing out to the very nth degree in any section, or any team member relationship, or any departmental, like how that's impacting your department as a whole, that I think is very, very important to continue the evaluation process, to make sure that you're acknowledging what's happening, how that change is impacting your work, and then reporting that so that future changes can be more advantageous. Because otherwise, changes happen to your organization, or changes are forced upon your organization, and there is no measurement and there's no feedback loop, then the other changes that happen after that might not have that in consideration, have the negative implications of those changes on your department. And so I think it's very important for leaders and leaders of teams to make sure that you're doing a continuous evaluation technique in your organization, just to make sure that you're communicating, like, this change that you put on us affected us good over here, but really badly right here. And we really need you to pay attention to this, so that as you have that information, you can pass it up and down the chain of command.
Yeah, I guess just talk to your contractors as well. Just make sure you have that feedback. Like, I don't know, we're always asking our government contracts, like, okay guys, do you have any feedbacks, how can we improve, is there anything? And then sometimes it's kind of like hard to get this information. It's like, okay, nobody wants to talk till there's a problem, like one of the small, like, a live examples, like we have one city we are working for, and we're working on the Arabic projects, because I have a lot of Arabics and in the city. So we use a translator who's an amazing translator, but he's like super black and white. It's like, okay, everything is like this way or this way. And so the conflict was very small. They just like his translation, and the lady who was writing the content, she just like a little bit softer personality. So she wanted the city to look a little bit softer, and he was just making a little bit like, okay, it's just this way. That's it. Like, if you don't do that, we'll penalize you. It's like, okay, so instead of just like, okay, so what do you do? Just come to us and say, well, actually, maybe we can just use a different translator. I mean, we have plenty of people who do Arabically, or maybe he can just be a little bit softer because we want our people to hear it this way. It's like, okay, so we fix that. It was like a, 1 hour or like 15-minute conversation with the translator. It changed, and it's like, okay, that works. Everything is great. It's just one of those. I know that Jake usually is a person talking to our contacts in the government, just asking for the feedback and things like that.
Yeah, so that's just a great example of just how those evaluations actually impact the work that's actually happening in the moment. So during these times, as a leader that's navigated many such really challenging times, like I would say prior to this, the other worst, like the most recent worst time prior to this was COVID. COVID was pretty dang bad for a lot of businesses, and it was very, very painful to navigate. But we navigated that. We navigated it all together as a nation, as a country, heck, as a globe. We navigated that, and we're going to navigate this too. This is not as big as that was. I mean, there was shutdowns, there was freezes, there was no going to work for weeks and weeks at a time in different places. I mean, people were sick, some people were dying. That was really bad. And this is not even, this is nowhere near that. And I think that sometimes we over magnify it in our head. But in these specific times, when it's very tumultuous, and it's one thing is I learned from going through COVID, I think, is meeting more often with your team and discussing those and working through that, either with your supervisors or with your direct team members. Meet with them often. And often, I mean once a week at least, to meet with your team. Like, okay, this is what we know. This is how things are looking. This is, what the future looks like. Just answer some simple questions. Have a discussion around what the current environment, what the current environment is. And then it's like, okay, this is all we know for this week. This is what we've got. And next week, guys, we're going to meet at the same time, at the same place, and we're going to discuss this again. I'm going to share I'm going to share with you what I've got. Now let's go get all of our stuff done and be productive this week. And that's really sometimes all that you can do, because along the spectrum of solving a problem, there is time. And so many times we want to do everything possible we can to get out of the problem. But there is a requirement of time. When you are healing, like you get an injury, you can put a Band-Aid on it, but it still requires 3 or 4 days for that cut or that wound to heal. When we have a tumultuous moment in our government, it's still rough. I mean, we're putting Band-Aids on it and we're trying to patch ourselves back together and get things up and running, but it's still, there's a time factor that has to transpire in order for us to be able to work through it. And I think so many times we just want to get to the end of it, and we just can't. We've got to wait a few weeks. We got to wait a few days, and time will ultimately heal what's happening. And I'm 100% confident that right now, that as we work forwards and as we be as productive as we can and choose the next right step each day and each week, that we're all going to work through this, and on the outcome be much stronger. Now, I've got a question here in the comments that I want to pop up, and it says, we said that we said that what other people could do, but
Yeah,
what is Taika currently doing? If I understand it correctly, we told that.
Yeah, so how can we
that? What about us? What are we doing?
So, like, we had our own like risk management meetings and stuff like that. Just thinking like, okay, what can we do to help the government at this moment? So I think one of the things we have actually decided to do a DOGE
discount.
DOGE discount.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, okay, just whatever we supported, like, okay, we know that you're going through hard times. Can we do it? Like, okay, maybe we make our margins a little less. Maybe we just think smarter, do more, more things in house. But we do have those flexible pricing models. Like, we talked to some ISDs and they're like, okay, our budgets, like from last year to this year, they changed greatly. Like, what can we do? Like, okay, let's brainstorm. Let's think of the ways that can be done. Like, okay, one example specifically, of course, from our industry, like we all have access pretty much. Any interpretation company has access to a couple of phone interpretation services. All right, like we all can tap into that. And it's a great service. Like, okay, for emergency situations, great service. You can connect somebody on the phone. In a couple seconds, you can already connect to an interpreter. That's really awesome. But we know that a lot of times those meetings go longer. So if you calculate that price per minute, it just kind of comes to a higher number. So we said, okay, for those regular meetings, that are like an hour long, instead of just going through the phone service, which will be more expensive, we can just find an interpreter specifically for your ISD or whatever meeting you have. And this is more cost efficient, and it's a higher quality as well, because you just have a person that already knows that he's working with you guys. He's working on these cases. He knows a social worker. So it's more smooth system, greater result, and it's more cost efficient as well. So there's those flexible pricing models that we can talk about. That Jason was already mentioning. So we do. We're very transparent on what we do. So whatever report you want, whatever format is, you want to see it. Like we have done so many different reports for different government agencies because some of them want to see like that. They want to see that. They want to see that. Like whatever thing is important for you to see, we can provide that report so you know what's happening, what is the stage of your project. Whatever thing you need to know from us, like we can provide that. I don't know, anything else that Jake maybe can add?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, something else we're doing too is, I mean, we're looking outside of our industry and looking for partnerships, with other companies, and maybe it's something that we overlap in certain areas. Like we partnered recently, or last year we partnered with a company that has a really great experience with project management, and so we're using them, to help develop some of our project management techniques, and they're you know, I would say that that's a big thing that, we're doing. And I think it's something that could be carried over to other contractors as well. Be looking for partnerships. Maybe it seems a little bit different because you don't overlap on everything, but why would you want to? And I think that's really important that you look for people who add strength to your organization and don't take away. I recently had a meeting with an IT company that offers really robust cybersecurity, just looking at maybe, if we have a partnership down the road, you know, and maybe we won't have anything come of it, but they understand that, what, we've got a company that we know can do really heavy translation and interpretation work for us. And hey, we know as a language service provider, we have a company that can provide really robust cybersecurity, because if we come across a contract where we need some really heavy security or data privacy, things like that, we can call on them. And that's something I think that we've been doing, is looking more into partnerships with people who bring to our organization and we bring to theirs, a synergistic partnership. And I think that's a key thing for a lot of government contractors to be looking for currently in this time.
Yeah,
Really
yeah.
cool.
Communities working with communities is how you get through storms. The more people that you have in your corner, the better you're going to be in the long run.
Well, I think it's a great idea, and then you can just have your turnkey solution, instead of just a part, and then you need to write another, RFP or whatever, just to find the other vendor to do the other part. Like, okay, yes, they're just solutions that can be the whole solution. Somebody else is managing it, you just get the final product, like you have your start and you have the final product, instead of you just micromanaging every single step. It would just free a lot more time. It would be a way less bureaucracy. Somebody else is doing the whole thing. That's a good point.
Yeah, we're actually gonna have another webinar. So guys, like and subscribe and stay tuned for that one as well, because in a few weeks we're going to have a government contractor webinar with that exact partner that you're talking about, Jake. So that was a really good reminder. So thank you very much.
Okay, the other thing is, like, there is AI. I mean, we are here to use it. Anyway, like, you might be scared. I even heard, sometimes, like, oh, we made this new program, and it's like, just talking to some government people. So, like, okay, there's this new program, but I hate it. It's like, wait, like, okay, let's look into that. I mean, there's great systems like AI is there to help. There are all kind of software solutions that can make your work more efficient. So I think that we can use it, we should use it to the benefit. It's more efficient, and of course Taika is there as well to help with that. Just a lot of things got easier and more cost efficient for the government. Anything else?
I mean, here we call it project engineering. I mean, and that makes all the difference in so many cases. Sometimes we see that as we're working through bidding on government contracts, we're able to significantly cut massive costs out of the processing aspect of it, because because the costs simply aren't there anymore, because you can use different technology to process the content or work through it. And as long as, again, as long as that technology has not been restricted by a FAR regulation of any kind, or it's not restricted by on one of those government regulatory lists, you can access it and use it. And I think you very much should, to help your organization to be more efficient and more profitable.
But remember that the government does not replace a human.
Yeah, yeah. There's nothing that can fully replace the human. It's AI is awesome, and it's doing a ton of great work. But what really, when honestly in our industry, when AI came out, like the entire industry was like, oh my gosh, we're all going to die, and in 2 years we're not going to have any work. Well, what we found is there was like this tiny blip in the overall and the gross growth of our industry, and then it picked up its pace over the next 7 years. And as AI has increased, so have we been increasing our speed in implementing and using it. But there's never a exclusion of a human factor in it. That we've understood that there are many strengths and many efficiencies that it can bring, but there's always a human, the need for humans to process a section, a critical task set within the solution. So that's been a part of our AI learning journey.
Yeah, a real life example. We were working on for one of the cities. We were working on like a subcontractor for one of the websites, and we have done like 10 languages. And one of the languages was actually Chinese, and we haven't done that language. So the Amber said, okay, let's just test the website live. Like, okay, because you translate the documents, it's not the same. You need to feel how it feels like when you're actually a user. So we're starting to test, and Chinese is just horrible. Like, they're just comments upon comments upon comments, and so the company comes back to us with like, okay guys, you just really screwed up with Chinese. It's just so horrible. Like, how in the world you have so many like comments and fixing everything? Like, and we're like, wait a minute, we haven't done Chinese. You saw that Chinese is so great with AI that you just process it with AI, you put it there, and you saw that will be good. And then as the person starts to test, and it's like, okay, it makes no sense. So what happens at the end? We need to take Chinese fully off, before any Chinese people actually saw it. So take it full off, retranslate by a human. Yes, use AI, it's great, but do not replace a human. Like, okay, because you're talking to human. If you translate your content just for another AI to read it, is fine. But if there's actually a human reading it, just remember that should be a human, actually humanized on the content. So
yeah, this is constantly being tested and upgraded, and what I think what a lot of people don't realize is there are many different AI tools out there, and not all of them have the same depth of excellence in translating a specific type of content. So even as a translation company like ours, you have to know what the content is, and then which tools are going to marry up with that content the best and provide the best output. And then after you do that, after you've done all the correct steps in the processing, then go out and look and make sure your human eyes go over that. And
you match it with a perfect human to go with that type of content as well.
Yeah. So it's just, there's always a human involved in this process. It's simply, it does help us to process a lot of content much faster and more consistently, especially in the terminology area. Okay, so we're wrapping it up here pretty soon.
We're pretty much wrapping it up. I think we have. Okay, any final words on budget cuts?
Well, cut your budgets when you don't have the extra resources. I mean, when the going is good, you see people don't pay as much attention to the numbers, and that's kind of a natural phenomenon. But you should always pay attention, and I think that's times that like lean times like this, they drive us back to that discipline of, wait a minute, okay, actually, we do have to be more disciplined. We do have to make sure that these expenses make sense and that we're justifying our expenses instead of just willy-nilly spending. And I think that works at home as well as in business, because if once you lose the discipline to care about the expenses that you're making and justify them logically, then you've lost a ton of money. So I don't.
So can I ask my last question outside the box for Jake? So as like you are like, okay, all of us were following what's happening in the past couple of weeks, you know, like, okay, it looks really, really great. I mean, great, and it's gonna look really darker, you know, as the clouds get darker, like, and how can the process contracts, like, will there be contracts? Will is the system completely go away? You know, us talking to some other contractors for the government, you know, or even our people that work for the government, our company. It's like, okay, what do you do? Is there hope for the contractors? How do you say in this? You know, is it getting better now?
Um, you know, I think that there is hope for contractors. I think that, and I think there's hope for government agencies as well. I'm not sure, you know, where we are in the storm, so to speak. I don't know that there's a real good answer to that. I don't even know if
Yeah.
maybe anyone really knows that, but I think what's important to realize is that, you know, it is going to pass. And you know, now is the time, like we've talked about, all these different things we could be doing, you know, and contractors should be doing, you know, for legitimate contractors and legitimate businesses to want to stay in the game and do business with the federal government. I firmly believe that after this storm has passed, there's going to be a much better opportunity out there. You know, we see, you know, statistics like the SBA gave away 5,500 loans, you know, to people who really weren't even qualified. You know, they were aged 11 years old. You know, for there's no reason for
Oh,
that to be happening.
how is that
You know,
possible?
that's millions and millions of dollars that you know have been taken out of the marketplace. You know, and I'm not going to say fraudulently, but mistakenly. You know, you look at businesses, you know, after this is all over, and it's like you're going to see this marketplace that actually has real opportunity, real funding, and real allocation of contracts that are going to be, you know, maybe it's going to be a rough 6 months, you know, 3 months, maybe it's a rough year. I don't know. But then afterwards, you're going to see this really, I would say, ripe marketplace that's going to be looking for the right businesses to do work with and is going to be paying, you know, much better contracts and much more, you know, valuable contracts for services that you provide. So I know it's hard to see past the storm, but I think we can see past storms in our own lives. You know, personally, in business, it's just one of those storms we have to ride out. And Jason hit it right on the head. He said there's still opportunities out there. You know, if there's one takeaway from this, I would tell business contractors, especially, you know, look at the communities and the industries that the federal government was serving, you know, with these contracts, and maybe just instead of relying on the federal government, you know, to buy from you, get a little bit, you know, get your knuckles, you know, scraped up and dirty and go dig a little bit into those industries and try to dig up some work. It's there still. Just because the federal government's not buying doesn't mean that there isn't opportunity out there, you know.
That's right. I mean, look at all the new investment coming into the United States today. Yeah, not today. I mean, you know, over recent months, you know, this $500 billion being invested in Apple and all the other big large businesses coming into the United States and building their facilities. I mean, there's a ton of money being spent, and I think that's going to ramp up over the next you know 10 months. But it's gonna, you know, this period's a little rough, and when you're in the storm, you have to acknowledge that, yeah, you're in a storm that kind of sucks, and we batten down the hatches, and we tighten our belts, and we just work through that, making the next right decision each and every day, and then making sure that we are truly doing our best to be productive and choose the best service or the partner for our next contract or our next agreement that we're working through. So I've got a comment here I want to make sure we address. Yeah, and you know, that's something that was a good point that the commenter just pointed out, that there are many offices that are operating very efficiently, and they're doing a great job. They love the United States of America. They're invested in making sure America is the best country it can be, even on the right side and on the left side. There are great people in our country. That's what makes America amazing, is because there are really great people of very high character in government offices doing great work. And that's why I think maybe it feels so painful, because those people are not, they're not being heard and seen as much right now. And if you are one of those people and you're listening to this message, I just want to acknowledge you. And I just want to just reaffirm, like, keep doing what you're doing, because it matters, because it's actually helping people. You're doing a great job, and you're really making America a great place to live and to raise a family and to create a hopeful future. So I want to make sure that, you know, we're not saying that all government workers are, in any way, shape, or form, are inefficient or bad, but we do want to just let kind of spread the message of hope, saying there is a future, there are opportunities. The storm is rough. We acknowledge that with you, and there are really great people in our government service today who are just doing a bang up job, awesome work, keeping our country safe, and operating very efficiently, and doing having very high integrity, keeping America growing and operating. And so we definitely at Taika Translations appreciate that. Appreciate those people.
I would say that everybody we work with from the
Yeah.
government, everybody is great. Like, we truly appreciate you. Like, have great conversations. You know, like, brainstorm things together. Like, you are just really awesome. So
Yeah,
that's
the
why
highest
we're here.
professionals.
Yes, absolutely. Like, I wouldn't say that any of them is inefficient in what they do. I think you guys are really doing a great job, and we'll still stay with you on the other side of the storm.
Yeah, I think that's actually a great point, Maggie. Is all of our CORs that we deal with in the federal government space have been phenomenal people. You know, we've been on meetings with them, we've been on calls with them, and they do. I mean, I recognize that, you know, they protect contract integrity, you know, all the time. You know, that's definitely something they watch. You know, hey, we want to make sure we don't exceed the contract. Hey, you know, we need to make sure that, you know, this lines up with our price line items thing. You know, I've never ever encountered a situation where I felt like there was anything wrong. In fact, exact opposite. You know, just above board honesty and transparency. And it's what is really hard is for people who are doing a really great job, is you kind of get thrown in the muck, you know, with maybe some of the stuff that's not working. And you know, it's a hard thing when you get lumped in, you know, all together. And we definitely recognize that, you know, those people are doing a bang up job, and just keep doing it. You know, you are the people that we actually look for doing business with, you know, and that's, we have certain CORs that I just, you know, when I get an email from them or I get a phone call from them, you know, they're great people, and they're really concerned about, you know, making sure that everything's getting done. And you know, we've had great opportunities to work with these people. So yes, please keep doing it, and don't get discouraged, because there are vendors and contractors out here that just, you know, we thrive on the relationships that we have with you.
Yep.
Absolutely. So I think it was a really great talk. Just a quick recap. So who should contact Taika? What services do we actually provide after all this long talk? I mean, translation, transcription, interpretation, anything related to language, desktop publishing, you know, anything formatting, helping with visual stuff, accessibility, subtitles, audio descriptions, pretty much everything from that realm.
Assistants, virtual assistants, blind.
Virtual assistants to the blind as well. It's just a very specific service we do provide. Yeah, I mean, anything you have, anything digital, just send us an email.
Go to www.taikatranslations.com, and we'll be glad to help you. You'll probably get on the phone with one of us, either me, Maggie, Jake, or one of our great team members.
Absolutely. So we also would appreciate if you'll write, like, okay, is there any other, you know, subjects you want to talk about, like you want to hear about from our inside, from working with the government, corporate plans, anybody. So we would be happy if you're fine hearing our voices. We'd like that. So like, subscribe. I don't know, any other parting comments?
No, I think that's really great, and that's like, subscribe, please, and we've committed to being very much more broadcasting a lot more of these types of webinars. So like and subscribe, because we're going to be continuing to put out the more and more of these as time goes on, and just providing more insight on government contracting, more insight on team management, team leadership through storms like this, and then the products and services that make all of these contracts and sectors work. So the conversation continues.
Absolutely.
All right.
Well, it was really nice talking to Jake. I'm sure we'll talk again. It's not the end of the day yet.
All right.
But we wish you all guys to have a really nice rest of the day. If you're watching us on Friday, like our kids say, have a happy Friday. It's the best day of the week.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.